Hey, welcome back to the show. Hey, do me a favor. Subscribe, like the channel, tell your friends and family, click the bell for notifications. Like to build up subscribers, and we can monetize this channel at some point. Don't be afraid to share some comments. You like what you're hearing, don't like what you're hearing, right, wrong, disagreements. Don't be shy. All right, great to have you back with you. I want to check in on Trump. We're just over 6 months in on his administration. And if you look at the left-leaning media, progressive media, there's not much he's done right. And they are fully embracing this Epstein issue as a key platform for them to take out Trump's support in the midterm elections in 2026. The Drudge Report, one of the left's favorite websites, used to be the right's favorite website. I mean, just flush every day with Epstein stuff and how Trump is culpable, Trump's connected, Trump is in the files. And so this is something that Democrats have really felt they can grasp onto. And let's agree completely, and I'll talk about it in a few minutes. The Trump administration and Trump himself blew the Epstein thing. In terms of how they manage it, how they communicated with it, it's all on them. Egg on their face. They brought this on themselves. But I just want to run down generally, from a Republican conservative perspective, what Trump's been up to and how supporters of Trump should generally feel pretty good about what's happening. Now, if you're like me, you don't like Trump's personality, his bombastic nature, his coarse nature, his dickish nature. I mean, when he takes time to fuss about Stephen Colbert or Rosie O'Donnell or personal individuals, he's very thin-skinned. And so apart from his personality, his message of communication, the tweets, the social media stuff, you can generally feel good about what Trump's doing from a policy perspective. In fact, what Trump's doing from a policy perspective is something that Republicans and conservatives have been asking for since the 1980s. That Republican elected representatives at the presidential and congressional level have just ignored. And it includes immigration, it includes trade, it includes fiscal policy, it includes regulation, it includes education. And so generally speaking, from a policy perspective, Trump's done pretty well so far. He's doing what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail, which everyone heard, everyone got a chance to digest and decide their votes on. And the polling seems to suggest that he's doing things Americans want as well. His approval rating is still relatively high compared to Obama, Bush 1, Clinton. Of course, he's being dragged via the Democrats' only tool, only weapon they have, and that's the federal district courts. 750 odd district courts at the federal level across the country, 300 controlled by Republicans, well, Republican appointed judges, the balance by Democrat appointed judges. And they're using the federal courts to really drag Trump down. But on immigration, it's hard to get better news than what we've seen from Trump. 6 months now of keeping America relatively safe. These southwest border apprehensions in June were the lowest ever recorded. Remember the whole debate during the Biden administration in the legislation in Congress about immigration reform and how the only way President Biden could control the border is if the Congress gave him the means to do so through immigration reform, which, as we know, is nothing more than an amnesty bill. Thankfully, that never passed. And what happens? President Trump simply enforces the laws we have on the books deliberately, diligently, and illegal immigration is almost down to zero. Really impressive to see. He's getting some pushback from the left-leaning media progressives about his level of deportations. And they're mocking Trump to suggest that the level of deportations and numbers are pathetically low and should be embarrassing. Obama, of course, as we know, over his 8 years, 3.5 million deported. Of course, Trump pushes back and says, we're just focusing on criminal aliens right now, and that next steps will bring in larger numbers. But really good news on the immigration front that Republicans and conservatives have been asking for forever. Legal immigration, all on board. Controlled, 250, 300,000. I'm not a huge fan of President Trump's $5 million gold card. I think that's stupid, silly. And so on the immigration front, good job by the president so far from the Republican conservative perspective and the illegal immigration, period. On the fiscal side, not so well, right? The big, beautiful bill, there's lots in that big, beautiful bill. And by the way, that's actually what it was called, that are good things for Republicans, no question, in terms of where money spent, how money spent, efforts to defund certain agencies at the executive level. Of course, the elimination of USAID, the rescissions bill, but the big, beautiful bill, the problem for that with that bill for Republicans, conservatives, generally the mainstream, is that it just continues more of the same. More deficits, more debt. Small drops in spending over a 10-year period, which are relatively meaningless. So some progress on the fiscal side, but still more of the same. Democrat, Republican doesn't really matter. So not too many high grades on that side. When it comes to international trade, again, Trump's doing something no president has done since the 1960s, and that is actually try to protect domestic industries, protect domestic jobs, reverse this massive trade imbalance that we've engendered since the 1970s when we opened up to China. Then in 1999, when Bill Clinton signed permanent normal trade relations, 2001, when they came into WTO. And of course, it's not just China. We've run a deficit with every country on the planet. So Trump, as messy as it's been and as confused as it's been when it comes to tariffs, is using the power of the presidency, the power of law, the power of tariffs to try to reverse our trade imbalances, which is something that we must do. Now, so far, not much positive impact. Good rhetoric, good efforts, some good negotiations. I don't think he's going far enough, quite frankly. I think he's backing off. I think this taco idea, Trump always chickens out, is somewhat relevant when it comes to tariff negotiations. If he's having tariff negotiations that essentially bring U.S. tariffs down to nothing, we're not going to get any advantage. We need to have tariffs in place against foreign nations that have tariffs up on us. Equal tariffs between the U.S. and China is not going to really work because China still dominates the U.S. in terms of wage costs, labor costs, production costs. For instance, he's just announced a big trade deal with Japan. But that deal he's putting through with Japan for the Japanese-built cars is a better deal for the big five in Japan than it is for the big three in America. Now, the big three in America have screwed up, but they import autos from other countries besides Japan. And now the tariffs on Japanese cars coming out of Japan into the U.S. are going to be lower than U.S. branded cars coming into the country. And that's really infuriating a whole bunch of domestic manufacturers. And so it seems to suggest that Japan is going to get another, as it's been since 1970, unfair edge when it comes to competition in the auto sector. And of course, the Japanese have just wiped the floor with the big three since the 1970s. See the price of Toyota stocks up, GM down, Ford down, Stellantis down. So on the trade front, the rhetoric's right, the ideas are right, the results are not here yet, and it might be too soft. It might be too performative. When we look at the trade data at the census.gov for international trade, since President Trump was campaigning and clearly talking about tariffs, so let's go back summer of 2024. Our trade balance has markedly worsened. And it's worsened because people that were speculating if Trump wins, tariffs would come on. Let's get these imports in now. And based on the data, so far this year, after 5 months, we run a trade deficit in goods of $604 billion. We have record trade deficits since around May, June of 2024, averaging over $100 billion a month. And we can see record highs in January 2025, $152.3 billion trade deficit in January in goods. Now we've seen a little bit of improvement in April and May. April trade deficit was $86 billion, about what's average over the past 10 or 15 years, and $93 billion in May. So some improvement from January. But on this current trend, we're looking at a new record annual trade deficit in goods of $1.3 trillion. So a lot of rhetoric, a lot of good talk, a lot of efforts at reciprocity, a lot of bragging about what tariffs will do. And if you go to the Treasury, go to treasury.gov and look at their statements, their Treasury statements, you can see that tariff income has gone up by $50 or $60 billion over the past few months. He keeps talking about this big windfall of tariff money coming into the U.S. Treasury that might offset income taxes, for instance. But if he continues to agree to these deals that are really watered down dramatically, the balance isn't going to really change. And that flow of income he's expecting is not going to be there. So on immigration, good marks. Fiscal policy, not great, still budget deficits and more debt. trade good marks again, but the ultimate income may be not what we're looking for. That is to say, a marked improvement in our trade imbalance. And so a little mixed there, but still the effort is something that Republicans and conservatives appreciate. At least he's trying. Now, if it's performative, Republicans pay the price for this in 2026 and 2028. But if it's real and it keeps going, and we get some definite improvements in that trade imbalance, we get some more support for middle class Americans for better work jobs here in America. That's going to be important. Now, tied to this, of course, is his deliberate efforts at bringing in foreign direct investment from around the world, and this is kind of countervailing his efforts on the trade side. He wants to raise tariffs and reduce our trade deficits to protect American companies, American jobs, American workers, and then at the same time, he wants to bring in foreign nationals at huge levels to invest in America such that they now buy up ownership of U.S. assets. They control American workers. FDI is not the solution we're looking for. We want, if it's America first, we want Americans building the economy, Americans building companies, Americans building jobs, not dependence on foreign nationals to do that for us. And one of the trade-offs of running a trade deficit, and if he continues this way, is the loss of ownership of U.S. assets. And we can see this in stocks, bonds, currencies, commodities. We can see it in assets like companies, land, homes. So he's a little messy on trade, but again, trying and moving in a direction we've never seen before. So we're going to see how this develops. Then when it comes to regulation, there's obviously a deliberate effort by the Trump team to do something that is badly needed, is that to reduce the regulatory burden on U.S. households and businesses and the government itself. Eliminating agencies, reducing the size of executive branches. He seems to be on pace with actually eliminating the education department. There was an effort by the U.S. Congress just recently on a rescissions bill to take back monies that are already allocated to help this effort to reduce the regulatory burden, the administrative burden on U.S. households and businesses. So really good news there. That seems to be going forward, but I'm wondering to Trump, is that it? We're not done, I hope. Is Doge over? Let's hope Doge isn't over. Let's keep that train going. And so again, good news. That's part of their supply side economics idea, right? Supply side economics, reduce taxes, reduce regulations, free up capital, create investment, create jobs, grow the economy. And then lastly, in education, he's really doing some good work on education as well from a Republican conservative perspective. That is to say, he's talking about eliminating the education department, getting education back into the hands of state governments, taking on colleges and universities, the misuse of federal funds, the dependence on foreign nationals for full tuition, affirmative action, DEI, CRT, all that stuff. So good news there as well. So generally speaking, from a Republican conservative perspective, if you've been alive as long as I have, going back to Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, he's the first president to actually try to correct the mistakes of the past, the policy mistakes of the past that our elected officials who we voted into office have put upon us. Whether he succeeds or not to a degree that's going to satisfy Republicans or conservatives, that's up for debate, right? We're only 6 months in, another 3.5 years to go. All kinds of trouble is coming forward in terms of efforts by the Democrats to squash the Republican presidency. And if he were to lose the House in 2026, impeachment's coming right back on. All kinds of independent counsels, investigations. So if he can keep the House in 2026, maybe he can follow through on these ideas, these agenda items that have been so long asked for by Republican voters, conservative voters. And then lastly, foreign affairs, mixed here. Obviously, he was very wrong about Putin. He was very wrong about his ability to end the Ukraine war. And he's waffled back and forth on this, right? He was done with Ukraine. He was done with Zelensky. We're not going to provide weapons anymore. All of a sudden, of course, he can't control Putin. Putin's being more aggressive than ever. Putin sees an opening here to do what he wants to do. Trump has been wrong, can't handle Putin. Putin is pushing forward. And so Trump now in the past few weeks is reversed himself and now ready to fund Ukraine's weapon needs as necessary. Patriot missile batteries are being sent to Ukraine from our allies, from ourselves. Our weapon stocks are depleting. So he's reversed himself on Ukraine because he's misunderstood Putin and was wrong on Putin and couldn't control Putin. And wasn't able to end the Ukraine war on day one. And so he's learning more about Putin. He's getting fed up with Putin. And so it looks like this Ukraine effort is going to continue. And that's a huge mistake. Otherwise, handled the Middle East reasonably well. Seems like he's tempered down the Israeli-Iran conflict, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. Relatively speaking, good news there, aggressive action, trying to confront China on Taiwan, building up forces through our U.S. military to manage that when it happens. Again, as Xi Jinping said, they are going to take back Taiwan, so that's just a matter of time if he stays in power. He's managed the Pakistan-Indian thing pretty well. He's managed some African conflicts pretty well. On a foreign affairs basis, he's being tough. He's putting America back in front. He's not taking any crap from any countries. We can tie in trade tariff negotiations and foreign affairs, we can see. He's moving us away from the EU towards Asia. So generally speaking, not too bad. Again, apart from the personality, apart from the man himself, can you stop with the makeup? Please, Mr. President, stop wearing the makeup. And so if you can ignore his Twitter feed, his social media, his name calling, his coarse nature, and focus on policy, good things from a Republican conservative perspective. And let's hope that can continue in order to ensure American strength and prosperity in the years ahead in a way that wasn't so ensured over the past 10 or 15 years. All right, so that's the policy side. Now let's come back to Epstein. And boy, oh boy, did the Trump team and Trump himself mishandle this. Trump talked about Epstein on the campaign trail. Bongino did. Patel did. Bonnie talked about the list on her desk. Trump and the Trump team set expectations on the part of Republicans, conservatives, and the country, really, that the information is going to come out. We're not going to be the Democrats. Democrats had a chance 4 years to let the information out. They didn't. We're not that. The names are going to be dropped. Then quietly, what was it? I think it was a Friday evening. Pam Bondi announces the case is closed. No further action on the case. That infuriated the base, infuriated many people. So we do have a two-tier justice system. There are rich and powerful people that won't be touched. There are people that have been put in jail. Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail for the crimes that she was involved in with Epstein against underage girls. Hundreds of girls have given testimony that they were abused by Epstein. Who were the men that did this? Presumably it was men. And so we want this list. Now, there's all kinds of reasons why, legal reasons why this might not be happening, that are legitimate legal reasons. And that is to say that maybe the people on this list are people that simply were acquainted with, knew, spent time with Jeffrey Epstein at his homes, his island, that weren't involved with pedophilia, that weren't involved with the girls. And to release their names, of course, would be wrong. Defamation, libel. And so maybe that's the case. But if that's the case, then you have to whittle this list down to the people that presumably were involved in this trafficking. If girls said they were trafficked, they must have been trafficked with somebody. And so the idea is, of course, that he is a Mossad agent. Mossad says no. Israel says no. The list doesn't get out. That's it, period. They have something on Trump. Or it could be there's information in these files that's going to embarrass Trump. Maybe, remember, Trump said he severed his relationship with Epstein in 2004. Prior to that, he had lots of interaction with Epstein. So really poorly handled here. So then trying to tamp down the response from their efforts to shut down the case. Trump gets defensive, gets aggressive, says, I don't need your support, to MAGA people who are angry that he's not doing what he said he would do. Frustrated with the response still, he gives Pam Bondi, AG, the order to tell the federal district courts to release the grand jury records they have related to the case. Then we get what looks like distraction put out by the Trump team, releasing of the MLK files and assassination. Then we have this week Tulsi Gabbard at DNI releasing documents about the Russian collusion hoax orchestrated by President Obama. Again, legitimate stuff, but maybe distraction. So this is egg on the face. This is a reason why Trump could lose the 2026 midterms. And it has nothing to do with his policy efforts, which have been good, but he's going to be sullied by this horrible management of this situation. So it's not going to go away. He's hoping it will. Democrats are not going to let it go away. MAGA might become quieter, but Democrats are going to stir that pot as long as they can. Again, even though they had control for 4 years and could have released any information they wanted. So on the Epstein situation, Trump and his Trump team get an F. And unfortunately, that's going to sully the rest of what he's doing for some time, if not for the whole 4 years. So we'll see what goes on there in the days ahead. All right, that's all I have for you right now. Always try to buy American.